Perfect. Thank you so much. So good. So we've tackled the prototyping question. We've tackled trying to get a team and what does that look like. I think one question that again you may be tackling before, I'm trying to make sure that I cover everything that we're having in the chat. You may be talking about this later, but one of the questions we have is, once you release an MVP, what's next?
Well, let's get to that. We get to the product side, but good question there. All right. Well,
but you can continue, A.T. I just want to.
Thank you. Keep the questions coming. We'll pause here in a little bit and go through another set. But here's a resource that sums up a lot of what I just talked about. That if you have not read The Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick, I highly encourage you to go read this. It's a short, quick book. And the first time I read it, I was like, man, I wish I had read this 20 years ago, because it shows me all the mistakes I made in customer discovery. And I see this over and over again in entrepreneurs. And so the reason it's called the Mom Test is you go to your mom and say, Mom, I've got this great idea to do X, Y, Z. What do you think? And what do you think mom says? Mom says, that's a great idea, son. And then you go to your friends and your friends say, that's great. And you go to other people and say, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good idea. The trick is people are inherently nice. Everybody will tell you, you have a good idea. You have an interesting idea. Yeah, I'd use that. Yeah, I'd pay for that. And the reality is they're just being nice. They're not giving you the true feedback. And so the Mom Test encourages you to really focus on the problem, like I was talking about before. Don't talk about your idea at the beginning. At the beginning, it's 100% problem, 0% idea. Until you really vet, this is a real problem that's not biased. It's unprompted. You're not leading the witness about what do you think about this. They're saying it on their own. And then over time, as you move down through that framework and get to some of the customer side, then you can start bringing in some potential solutions, but really start with the problem. And this is one of the things I see from entrepreneurs all the time. One of my first questions I ask entrepreneurs I meet with them is, tell me what you learned in customer discovery. And there's a lot of people that give simple answers that say, everybody loves it. I said, well, why? Well, everybody said it's a great idea. Those are usually misleading answers that can give you a false perception that you're onto something. So a better answer would be like, well, I started talking to 50 potential customers in this space, and here's what they described as their problem. And then as I get forward with them, this is what they told me was most important to solve. And so that's what I'm going to focus on. That's a much better answer than the previous. So highly encourage you to read this book, because it really focuses you and gives you some practical advice on how to really ask questions about the problem and not about your solution. Because the minute you start talking about your solution, you're already biasing the answers you're going to get. All right. So I spent a lot of time pre-building anything, because I think it's so important to building a product. But now I'm going to move into some of the elements of go-to-market, of which product is one, because I think those all tie together to really proving something that customers want. So what is go-to-market? Think of it as everything we need to deliver our product or service. And this is important because it's not just marketing. There's strategy, there's sales, there's finance, there's product. All of these things are critical to building an effective go-to-market strategy, and they all have to align. You could have the best product in the world, but if you don't have the right sales strategy or marketing strategy, it's going to struggle, right? And so you have to align all these. And it takes many iterations, but I'm going to talk through a few of those. But this is the coming out of customer discovery. You should have a hypothesis on these questions. And as you start launching and building your product, these are ones that you want to continually test. Who is my target customer? Very specifically. What is my value proposition? Why would they buy this? They're going to increase revenue. They're going to lower costs. How do I price my product? What channels do I sell it through? What market trends am I taking advantage of that'll help make it easier to sell? And then how do I tell my story around this? Because the other reality is, right, you put yourself in the shoes of whoever you're talking to, they're pitched by entrepreneurs and products countlessly all day. And so what's your story that's going to make your solution and your understanding of their problem different? So these are good questions to think through during the discovery side, but then as you start to move forward into go-to-market. So simple framework I'll use here to talk through go-to-market: product, price, place, and promotion. And there's much more detail we go into each, but I'm going to touch on each one of them in a little bit and some of the key things for each. So first on the products, that's part of this session, right? How do you build the product? So we mentioned before, you do all that research and customer discovery before building. Now I've got some of those customers with authentic demand leaning in. Well, now what does that look like? The first thing I talk about here is building with development partners. These are those 3 to 5 that are willing to pay something to build a first version with you. And I don't like free in most cases because they're not committed to doing it. But it's something trivial, $1, something greater than 0 that makes them put some skin in the game and prove they're willing to take their wallet out for something that's, even if it's a trivial dollar amount. So how does that work? So I get these 3 to 5 customers, I get them to sign up, pay to build it with me. But now it's a much more iterative build with them. It's not me going back in my basement and building out these 20 product features and then coming back and saying, here it is. It's me building with them. Hey, it could look like this. Great. Let me go build this, show you this. Hey, here's what this would look like. Oh, tweak this. Oh, here. And they're involved in the process. And what I find is you get much better and quicker feedback. And they'll tell you, still needs to have these 2 other things before I can fully use it in my workflow. Or like, this is good enough now. I want to go live with this now. And then can you also build X or Y or Z? So it's a very iterative one. And I encourage you to build with development partners as you start building your first version of the product. Because the other thing is, people also, back to that mom test, people love you, tell you, oh yeah, AT, once you build X, Y, Z, then come back and we'll buy it. And so what did I do? I went back and I spent time and money building X, Y, Z, and I came back and I said, here it is. And then they said, well, I also need ABC. I don't like the idea of building with the promise that they'll buy. I want to see that they're willing to put some money down to then go build it with me. And that's a much truer sign of you're on to building a good product, the right problem. Second bullet I'll say is more features is usually not the answer. One of the things I've learned with customers is their default answer for everything is another feature. I just want a button that does this. I want a report that does this. I want a screen that does this. That's their default. That's just how most customers think. And so what happens is you can then end up with a product that's full of all these features. And guess what? Every feature takes time and money. You want to be laser focused back to that, discovery side. What's my unique target segment? One problem with one feature set that I can deliver 10x better, and be great at 1 or 2 things. And don't try and compete with the Salesforce, from an earlier example, on 50 features. As a startup, your superpower is speed and agility, not the ability to build endless feature sets. And so when you try and build lots of features, you end up being just okay at a bunch. You end up with a lot of technical debt you got to go fix later. You get a bloated product versus go solve one problem right now with one feature set that's 10x better. And they'll start using and paying for that. So really focus versus just building more features. Because again, I hear from a lot of entrepreneurs, yep, I'm going raising $1 million to go build these 6 features, and then sales are going to take off. Usually it's not how it works. The last 2 things here, I mentioned the storyteller, but one of the things as a product owner and as the CEO or founder, you're the head of product, as well as the head of sales and the head of marketing and all the things at the beginning, right? What is that story? And so back to the problem, I loved seeing the ones who can describe the story. So let me tell you about Martha. Martha is a marketer that struggles to produce endless ads across all these social media channels today. And so her problem is she doesn't have the time or the knowledge to make them all videos and do. So one of the things that we did was we helped somebody like Martha take her static content and produce video content in less than 5 minutes versus the 5 hours it takes today. And here's why. But you're telling a story around the type of user, the problems they have. And what you're doing is you're getting that potential buyer or person you're talking to. I get it now. I understand that persona. That's me. That's my persona. And so you tell that story about their personas versus I've got a product that does X, Y, Z, and you're pitching your product. Put it in the frame of them and not about you. And then the last thing, center of the universe just means, as we talked about, being conversant in sales, marketing, engineering, because as you're building the product, you got to be able to make sure you're getting the sales feedback in, the marketing, and coordinating with those functions. All right, Risha, should I pause for a minute? I see some more chat stuff coming in.
Yes, so we have a question from Prashant. Let's make sure they're still on the call. So the question is, I have an idea that would work and even know where to start. I need a technical partner, a data scientist. How do I, one, meet one, and then two, protect my interests so he or she or they doesn't run away with this idea and do their own thing?
Great. So first part, I'd answer back to what I said at the beginning. I would ask, why do you know you have a good idea? Probably is, but like, what customer discovery have you done and what people do you have leaning in to tell you why it's a good idea? And if they're leaning in, how can they help build it with you? And maybe they have some of those folks on their team that will help you build it. I know like a data scientist, like I know at Georgia Tech, and I'm sure Georgia State, there's plenty of folks that are majoring or using stuff like that. There's probably places and groups you can go to meet people like that to help you iterate through that. And then the second part about your idea, this is the trade-off in life, right? That again, the more protective, the less resources you'll have available to help you. And the less feedback you'll get on whether it's truly a good idea or not. Yes, somebody could take your idea and run with it. But again, my experience is the execution is far more important than the idea. And so within reason, finding people that are trusted or referred and having conversations, and you can even test them a little bit before you divulge the deep secrets of your idea, right? But I err on the side of just being more transparent than not, because I think you'll get somewhere bigger and faster than if you're more secretive. But I know there are different opinions. So
thanks, AT. Now I've kind of answered this in the chat as well, but for those on the call, if you have a non-technical idea, would all the principles that you're talking about still apply? I want to make sure that you're able to answer that. I've answered that in the chat as well, but I want to make sure that you
have a non-technical idea.
Right. So like a fashion or candle or, one of those businesses that may not have some of them will tie in tech. They're tech enabled, but not necessarily tech focused.
Yeah. So the building of a product may be different, but the same framework around problem, market, customer, still all holds true. I meet lots of folks doing non-technical business, the same thing. I ask about, tell me what you learned in customer discovery. And it's, all my friends want this. Well, what does that mean? What type of friends? What do they look like? What do they need? What's their problem? Understanding those things around problem and market and customers are still just as important, no matter what type of business you have.
Thank you so much. I think at the moment that's kind of the questions we have lingering. Okay. And so, yes.
All right, I'll keep going. I'll get to some examples because I know we're getting closer to the time. So I'll move a little quicker here. One thing I'll say on pricing, there's a lot of things, but we've got an ROI calculator on our spreadsheet. But one thing to think about is, what is the value you're delivering? And the reason I say this is like, look, you could have a product that's priced at $10 and nobody would buy it because they don't think they're getting enough value from it. It's not worth $10. You could have a product priced at $1 million, but that company is getting several $1 million of value, and it's a no-brainer to sign up. So one thing I think about with pricing is, how do you define the value your customer is going to receive? So there's hard value, which is this is going to help them boost revenue for their business or save costs. That's the best kind. It's easy to quantify and show. But the vast majority of folks have what I call soft value. They say this is going to make us more efficient or save us time. All true, but those tend to be more nice to have ideas that are harder to consistently sell and retain customers. And so one trick I've learned with this is you could have that efficiency. So let's just say I'm going to make a marketer 25% more efficient. Well, great, that's good. But then when the marketer goes to get approval from the CFO for the budget, the CFO says, well, what did you do with that efficiency? And if the marketer can't say, well, I spent more time in campaigns and got this many more leads, or I didn't have to hire these consultants, or I didn't have to fill this role, that's where it starts to become a hard value. So help your customers take the next step from, yeah, it made me more efficient or it saved me time, to what did that efficiency or time savings mean in terms of dollars? So I'd encourage folks to think through that. All right, on the marketing side, sort of the product, price, place, and promotions. On the place side, There's a couple different levers here that I think are important. One is there's a lot of things that you control, sort of this owned media. You can build your own blog on your website and have your message on your own social channels. One of the things I love to test ideas is having a landing page. Before you've built anything, you put up a landing page. I've got something that's going to do X, Y, Z. Click here to sign up. Coming fall 2023. How many people click to sign up? And each person that clicks, that's a free customer discovery call to follow up with them and learn more. So there's a lot of things that you can control that don't really cost much money. And I encourage folks to really start there because you're in full control of that message and how you interact there. So know that there's a lot of things you own. The next level is ones that you earn. You know, referrals from friends or folks in the industry. You may be able to get in a publication or some PR, or you get customers to leave some reviews. There's lots of things you can do here and encourage, but it takes a little bit extra step to get those about your business. And then the last one, obviously, you can pay for certain things, whether it's, you know, ads on a Google or social platform or other things. But those sort of tend to come last. You can test a few things there, but as you're building the idea, I tend to start less there, dabble that maybe a little bit, but focus on what you can control on the own side as you're getting going with the business. And then the fourth P, product, price, place, and promotion. The other thing you want to think about as you're building your product is how is it helping people get through my sales funnel? And so here's a very basic sales funnel, but as it applies to building a product, how is this helping and what else do I need to do to help? So the first thing is awareness. How do people even know to look for my product? And so we mentioned there's some of the things you can do around you're writing about it on your blog and you're an expert in your field there. You're running some search ads that are pulling people in. You're attending a conference. There's a lot of different ways, but one part is building that awareness. The second part is then the consideration, right? So now that they've got my awareness, I know that company X I should look at. What do I have available on my website? Demos, white papers, trials, what sort of things get them to consider and pricing and take a look at it deeper. Down to the next one, sort of the conversion side. How does my product help get them across the finish line to sign? What do they see? What do they not see? As customers sign up, I love asking them, well, why did you sign up? What was it about my product? Or if they don't, what was it about it, you know, that prohibited you from, and learn, because that all helps you refine your product. And it could be the product itself, it could be the messaging, it could be the value. There's lots of those go-to-market levers. And then ultimately, this is the secret sauce here down the end. So once you've done that, there's still more product work around loyalty. So once you sign them, are they going to stay? Are they going to renew? And then advocacy, are they going to tell their friends? So one of the businesses that we're fortunate enough to work with here from beginning in Atlanta is a company called Calendly. And one of the things that they did that was so amazing is they nailed that loyalty and advocacy piece. That they had a simple button or a little logo at the bottom of every meeting invite that said powered by Calendly. And so Risha would send me, when it first got started, a Calendly invite. And I'd see powered by Calendly. I was like, well, that was simple. And then I'd see another one and another one. And before you know it, I saw a couple and I said, wait a minute, I should go try this. And then I would go try it. Oh, it's a free version. Great. And then I wish it had these other things so I could do different meeting types. Oh, it does. And then wait, several of us in the office all have it. We should get our boss to pay for the premium version. And so we go to and get it as a business sale. But the point was they built an amazing model of loyalty and advocacy that helped make their funnel even easier because their customers were creating their own awareness and consideration and conversion for them. So they had to spend next to $0 in sales and marketing to really get the virality going. So this is one example, but the point of this is know that how you build your product and evolve your product is a function of what you're finding here. Because you may find I'm getting a ton of awareness, but little conversion. Why is that? How do I revolve it? Or like everybody that's coming through is converting. I'm just not getting the awareness. Why is that? And how do I refine the product and the message there? All right, so let me pause there. Reach any other questions before I go into two examples with specifics of companies and how they did this?
No, I think everyone is in tune with what you're saying. And so they're,
Okay.
I think, on the edge of our seats trying to figure out what's the next step that you're going to tell us how to do. So
all right, well, let me give you two examples of companies we started in our studio and how it went through the process. So Greensy is a company that builds software to make commercial lawnmowers autonomous. So how did we move through the process? Started with the problem. Problem was there are tasks that are boring, repetitive, and dangerous, and humans don't like those tasks. Humans love challenging tasks or things that aren't dangerous, they're fun, but boring, repetitive, dangerous tasks people don't like. And lawn mowing happens to be one of those. My first business I ever started as an entrepreneur in high school was a lawn mowing business. And I can tell you, being out in the August heat, riding mowers back and forth all day is not a fun job. It's boring, it's repetitive. And so what we found was there were lots of folks that are having a hard time finding the labor to do lawn mowing. And so we started with an idea, well, what about maybe like a residential, the little Roombas for the yard? And what we found was there's some technical challenges, but people were already doing that. So we started talking to other folks like commercial landscapers that have a truck that pulls up. 5 guys jump out and they ride mowers back and forth all day in the hot sun on like a 10-acre park or field. Boring, repetitive, but they can't find enough labor. So they have to not take deals or have the labor not show up and then they can't do it. So interesting. So we started riding around with some of them. What does their day look like? One of the things we saw, right, is that for residential, the yard's got to be perfect and look really good. And there's hills and there's obstacles and there's kids running around. Well, for a big field, they're usually flat. There's usually fewer obstacles. Okay, that's interesting. We started getting some of the market. Well, with autonomous vehicles and the cars, all of that technology that's getting better and cheaper can be applied to lawn mowing. And it hasn't historically been done that way, right? And as we look forward, that there was no question that 5 to 10 years from now, and this was 4 or 5 years ago, there's going to be autonomous lawnmowers everywhere. Nobody wants this job, right? They like to do the edging and the trimming and stuff that looks good, not the boring stuff. And so we said, all right, problem check, market check, go to the customer side, start talking to folks, and people were like getting those lean in questions, right? And so one of the things we did, we put up a landing page, had built nothing, again, not touched building a product, that said, we've got an autonomous lawnmower that can do X, Y, Z, click here to sign up and be on the pre-order for the coming year. The number of folks that clicked on that said, we've been waiting for this, how many can I buy? What dealers do I get it from? What does it cost? Does it do this type or does it do that type? All signs of authentic demand and buying. And so what did we do? Back to my development partners comment, we went and found 2 of the largest landscapers in the country that said, I want to pay to go build this with you. And so started iterating with them. Of course, the first versions don't do all the features, don't fully work, but you're building it with them, getting the feedback in the field versus in the lab. That's the other advantage of building with customers is we learned what happened when you went into a ditch or when it overheated when it was 110 degrees versus if we were building it in a controlled lab, we wouldn't have learned those things. And so building those early things with development partners, and then now ultimately starting to scale that up across multiple dealers, multiple developers, different motor types. We got several different manufacturers who are building these. But the point was we went through that process of problem, market, customer, iterated through that a couple times, got some development partners and used that to start building up and growing. So that was an example with Greensy. I'll give you one other example here. Another company we started. So back to, the question about non-technical businesses. This is more of a non-technical business. A company called In Town Golf Club. It's an indoor golf and social club right in the heart of Buckhead. And the concept here was, well, we started with the problem. Problem was there are people that love golf, but it takes too much time or it's too expensive. And if you look anymore, the land in a city is far more valuable to put buildings and apartments and other things than to put a golf course on it. And golf courses aren't very green from an environment perspective, but yet there's places like Topgolf that show there's alternative models for golf, there's food and entertainment. We looked around in Korea, there are these indoor golf simulator places, called GolfZone, that there's 5 times as many as there are Starbucks in Korea. So in other geographies, there was a need for this. So we started doing more research and tuning in and really found that there's advantages of country clubs or private clubs, but people don't like the pretentiousness or it's not accessible or the cost is available. But there's people that like golf and want to be able to play golf at 7 in the morning 7 at night when it's dark, when it's hot, when it's rainy, when it's cold, when it's snowy. And hey, instead of taking 5 hours, it takes me 30 minutes to go play a round of golf at a place like this. And oh, by the way, there's a community of folks that are like-minded and I can hang out with and have stuff. So how do we do this? We went through some of those problem areas, went through the market, started talking to customers. And again, before we built anything, we wanted to go pre-sell 100 memberships to this place with nothing built, no drawings, just an idea. And we sold 100 memberships with nothing, no product. So then we said, all right, great. We think there's something there. We went and raised some money, then go start doing some drawings. And here's what the place could look like and working with some construction firms to just build it and finding a location. And so as we started going through that process, we wanted to sell the next 300 memberships before it even opened to prove the authentic demand. And so we went and sold those next 300, and now it's fully sold out, has a waiting list. We're open locations in multiple cities around the country. But back to the point of really vetting the idea before you start building, we were able to pre-sell memberships just on the idea of building no product. And again, had it not happened, great, we would have just pivoted and revised the idea then. But it's so much easier to change and pivot your idea before you've built anything versus once you've built something, it gets that much harder. So I use this as an example again of saying, how do you test that customer discovery and authentic demand to know what the product needs to be before you start building it? And then you're that much more confident to go build it and grow. All right, 2 examples there. Before I wrap up, Risha, any other questions or wrap up here and then we'll circle back.
We don't have any questions, but I had a thought for those who are building non-technical things, which your examples are fantastic about giving a technical and a non-technical aspect of it. So if you have a smaller product, say you're selling pies or something, would you recommend, say, going to, say, a farmer's market or, just places like that are simple that you can test out your idea, or building, as you said, a landing page? What would be your advice for?
Both are great ideas. You can put up a landing page and say, we're going to build these pies. Again, I would ask a lot of the questions of, well, who is my target customer? Why are they not happy with existing pies? What's going to make my pies different or better, right? Really understanding those questions and talking to folks, right? And so having an idea of that, again, before you're even building or baking pies. And then once you got an idea, then that's a great idea. Go to the local farmer's market. You bake 5 or 10. Sell them, talk to people, get feedback, right? Or show up at, an event, sponsor some, show up and give them away free at a Georgia State event, right? And get some feedback. But I love that idea of just testing in small batches and learning before you go all in on building a location and stuff like that.
Thank you. We have no questions at the moment, but again, fantastic information that we're getting. I see Justin taking notes and all of that. So
all right. Well, let me wrap up here and then we can go to any other questions or any other topics you want me to cover. But this entrepreneurship is hard. It is, the numbers show that most businesses don't succeed, but I think it's a fun journey. And whether it's successful or not, most folks I talk to say that experience was worth it for all the learnings of how to build. And one of the things I like is that you're in control as an entrepreneur. There's a lot of things in life you can't control, but as an entrepreneur, you can control a little more than most. And so here's a couple of the takeaways I have just, for everything we talked about. Is the first is, build a product that solves a must-have mission critical problem. Really spend the time on the problem. If anything you take away from this, don't go build a product, go prove the problem and the authentic demand first, because it just sets you up for success if it's there. And if it's not, that's okay. Like in our studio, we go after problems and we do more customer discovery. We realize that's not the right place to go. And we pivot it before we built stuff. And so that's okay. That's normal. And that's a good thing. But really spend the time to make sure before you start building that it's a must-have mission critical problem you're solving. And all about the problem, not about your solution. Second is just find target customers with a clear value proposition. So again, back to the pie example, there's plenty of pies out there. People like pies, but what is your specific target customer? What's different about your pies? How do you market to them differently? How do you sell your product differently? What's the value prop that makes people say, this is the best pie for this type of person with this, needs, right? And then the third bullet point is we mentioned some of those go-to-market pieces that really tie into making the product effective. around product, price, place, and promotion. But that's an iterative process too. And you have to get that right to really start scaling up your business as well. So even if you've proved there's a real problem with authentic demand and you build a early version of a product with development partners, the next step to start making it scalable is aligning and adjusting that go-to-market strategy where you're tweaking the product, you're tweaking the price, you're tweaking the promotion, you're tweaking the place, and iterating through all that to ultimately help you continue to scale up. And then here, if you go to our website, I mentioned we got lots of resources. There's more detail on all these things. Like in each section, I've got questions to ask, blog posts about it, tools and templates, like what you have to feel to move on to the next step. Then we've got, lots of other events and things on there as well. So I encourage you to check out our website, AtlantaVentures.com. And with that, Risha, I'll sort of pause and answer any other questions that you or the group have.